Chris, I hope you're having a great day. It's like a holiday here in Tuscaloosa with Alabama back out on the practice field.
I can only imagine. I know that when having covered that program now for a while, Ryan, and with the kind of success they've had under Coach Saban, that when they're playing football there, that a lot of people happy and you're part of the woods.
No doubt. It's like the mood just gets better. It's just like you travel around town and, it's all about college football. And there's so many. This spring, this anticipation of this spring and the conversations around the coaching changes and quarterbacks and running backs and offensive linemen, it's like an all-you-can-eat type buffet when we talk about nuggets coming out of this practice facility.
Well, there's a lot new, and there's a lot of an unknown, really, with the program. When I was there a week and a half ago visiting with Nick, it's pretty obvious that when you look at the turnover on the staff, I don't think it's something that he was looking to create turnover. A lot of the guys went elsewhere, got better jobs, had jobs, coordinators. Dable went back to the NFL. But one thing that he did want to do, he told me this, was he wanted to get younger on his staff. That was by design. If you look at I think there's 4 guys now on his staff, full-time assistants that are under the age of 40. And a couple of those guys are early to mid-30s. So he felt like that was something that he needed to do, recruiting, relating to players. He said, every stop previously, whether it was LSU, other places, he always had young coaches that went on to be head coaches in a lot of cases. And he felt like that was something, again, that he wanted to do. So when you look at the staff, you're right, a lot of new. You got a new offensive coordinator, you got a new defensive coordinator. Here's a stat that jumped out to me is you go back to their 15 national championship season. You take that staff, that coaching staff, there's not a single coach on that staff, I think this is correct, who's still there in their same role. Natasha Blue Boy was there, but he was not defensive coordinator in 2015. So there's not a single on-the-field coach. I think the only guy that would be in the same role would be Cochran, the strength coach. But the 10 of back then it was 9 on-the-field assistants. There's not any one of those guys that were on that staff in 15 who are still there in their same role in 2018.
Well, and you made the point here. It's one of Saban's comments, the quotes that you put in here. It says, just because we change people, we don't change philosophy. And I went back, Chris, he said the same thing to you and I in 2012 when Jim McElwain had left and Doug Nussmeier came in. He said the same exact thing. We went back and found the audio. I don't know if you could survive if you really allowed people to come in and change your philosophy. I don't know if they would have the type of success.
Well, and why wouldn't it change when you look at the kind of success he's had? 5 national championships in 9 years pretty much speaks for itself. But where he's different, and Nick is old school in a lot of ways. He'll tell you that, he's one of these guys that even though he's got the backup camera in his car, he still sets his side mirrors. I think his kids still get on to him and give him a hard time about that. So he's sort of stuck in his ways, and I am too a little bit. But he's not old school when it comes to trying new things and changing and adapting and evolving. He wants new blood, new people coming in, bringing new ideas and challenging him. I think that's part of, what keeps him going and keeps driving. And yes, he's had a ton of offensive coordinators. Mike Locksley now will be the newest one this year, and he's not completely new to the staff, as Mike has been on the staff, but he will be new as far as being the guy that calls plays. But I think Nick likes that. I think he looks at it as a challenge. He feels like it's a way to stay fresh, stay ahead of the game. And for a guy, again, who can be pretty stubborn about things, he's not one that's not willing to adapt because he's done that, whether it's bringing in Lane Kiffin, whether it's running more of the RPOs, changing some stuff on defense, tweaking some things they do. And I think one of his other quotes he told me in that story is, I'm always looking for ways to get better. And I think that's what separates him.
You've also got a quote here, and you're talking about you've got to win games to survive. I get that. But to make the standard anywhere winning 5 championships in 9 years, it's just not realistic. Nobody had ever won 5 championships in 9 years, and now the expectation is that you're supposed to win every year. It's not going to happen, end quote, Nick Saban there. But you back up, I don't even know what really fair expectations would be around this program if it's not a national championship every single year.
Well, for the fans, there's no question that's what they expect, because that's sort of what, as Nick himself will say, when you sort of create that monster, you got to feed it. Now, I think you could say that the monster that is Alabama football was created a long time ago. But, they had down years, bad years, but he's come in and taken it to a whole new level. But I think for him, and this is sort of the way he operates, is he doesn't really care what you or me or Joe Fan or anybody on the periphery feel like the expectation or standard is. He has his own standard, play to it. And as I don't know, Damian Harris was really telling in his comments, he says, listen, he said, people think that everything we do here is geared toward winning championships. He said, I've never heard Coach Saban use, hey, we got to win a championship, or we're playing for a championship this year. We need to add another one to our collection. He said, I've never once heard him use that as motivation. It's more the journey, the grind. And I do believe Damian when he says it. I think that's what keeps Nick going. Is he loves evaluating players. He loves recruiting. He loves being on the practice field, being a part of the practice field. Running drills himself in some cases. Holding the coaches' feet to the fire, the players' feet to the fire. That's the part of it. Just be a part of the team. As he said, ever since he can remember, that's what he's done. Going back to when his dad started Pop Warner football in the part of West Virginia where he lives. That's just who he is. That's what drives him. But yeah, I think the expectation probably on the outside is that they should win it every year. I mean, as I've asked you before, Ryan, the year that Alabama won the SEC championship, the year that Blake Sims was a quarterback and went to the playoff, I guess that was the first year of the playoff, and lost to Ohio State. What was the reaction there? Did you have many people calling and say, man, we won another SEC championship, great year, we won X amount of games, we were able to sort of overcome some limitations, or was it more, how can we lose to Ohio State? How can we not win a national championship? I'm sure it was probably the latter, right?
Well, we played the what-if game for 240 days. I mean, what if this would have happened? What if Ezekiel Elliott would have done this? And, I mean, it was the what-if game. I mean, it was no celebration here, and it was the same thing after Clemson. National championship game appearance, it was all about, I mean, it was like a funeral around here for 9 months.
Which again, sort of tells you, and Nick's aware of that. He knows that's what it is. I don't think he necessarily likes it, but he understands that's the way it is. I've always said, he's going to coach, I think, for a lot longer. The two or three things could potentially drive him out. Number one, if there was some kind of health issue, and he is really healthy right now, about as healthy as a guy at 66 could be. Number two, if there was some type of upheaval in administration there at Alabama, that he didn't like, or people for some ungodly reason came in and tried to sort of lean too hard on him. I can't imagine that ever happening. Number three, if he felt like that expectations were so out of whack on fan base, the fans and the people that pay his salary and the people there at the university, that it was almost like it was taken for granted. I don't really think that's the case, and I'm not sure he thinks that's the case. But I think those are the three scenarios that would push him out. But he's so insulated to a lot of that, Brian, that he's so focused on what he's doing, and coaching and recruiting and developing, and every day sort of getting up and tackling that day, is I don't think he even thinks about those kind of things until maybe sometime in the off season when he's asked about it or it comes up, that type of thing. But he's, as he's told me many times, his life's there in Alabama. His mom was in Birmingham, his granddaughter, kids are all there close by. So that's where he wants to be, and he's happy doing it. He's got a great situation. He's got as much control as any head coach in the collegiate ranks, basketball or football, across the country. And he's got a juggernaut. They continue to recruit at a high level. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I agree with what Damian Harris said, and I agree with what Coach Spurrier said based on his conversation with Nick, that he'll go into his 70s easy.
Chris, I want to ask you, what do you see? And I know that you've talked to Saban. We've referenced your article. We had you on, I think, the day that it wrote about the two quarterbacks. But let me ask you your personal prediction. Knowing what you know about Nick Saban, knowing his tendencies, what do you think is going to happen with this quarterback conversation here in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I mean, I know what the fans want to happen, because last impressions are pretty powerful. And
sure.
The last time we saw Alabama play, we saw Tua Tagovailoa throw an absolute dart for the winning touchdown and really sort of pump life into that offense in the second half. But as one coach, and I've been around the country this spring talking to different coaches, as one coach said to me, he says, listen, that was one moment. He says, you don't base what you're going to do going forward on one moment. And I think Nick's the same way. I do think Tua gives him more of a lot more firepower in the passing game. I think there's a question. I think his propensity to turn it over more than Jalen Hurts did scares him a little bit. But the bottom line, Ron, is it would be a guess. I think a lot of it's going to depend on who wins the job, who wins the team this spring. Nick's not going to tip his hand this spring and say who his quarterback is. Why would he? This thing will go into the preseason. Based on everybody I've talked to and what I know, I would say that Tua probably gives him the best shot. But if you know anything about Nick Saban, he never, ever goes into a game, to practice, to spring, to fall, sort of thinking, all right, this probably is going to happen. He's one of those guys who lets it play out. I think that's what he ultimately will have. He told me, he said, listen, if they both play at a high level, it's not out of the realm that we would find a role for both those guys. Now, he didn't say he was going to play a two-quarterback system. I don't think that's in the plans at all. Would that mean that one of them would switch positions? I know a lot of people have said that maybe Jalen Hurts would switch positions. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I think he's smart, and this is not his first rodeo. You go into spring, you let him compete. The players on the field see you as the best guy. You can't fool him, and you sort of let the chips fall where they may.
But, Chris, could you not go back and look at that second half and say, you always use Nick Saban verbiage, taking the bull by the horns. In some ways, Tua took the bull by the horns in the second half, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he like I said, he gave him new life, punched, new life in that offense, and gave him the ability to throw the football down the field. That's something that Hurts struggled with. But here's the thing that I think a lot of people lose sight of. It's not like Hurts has been a disaster. Go back and look at their record with him at quarterback. There are different types of players, yes. But again, that's one half, one moment. We'll see how it plays out over the course of the spring and fall. I do believe, as I said a minute ago, that Tua gives him more. He gives him more ability to throw the football. And when teams load up against him, which a lot of them do, that makes defenses play a lot more honest. Now, how consistent is he through the spring and preseason? What the summer's like? Again, I think it's. Here's the thing, Ryan. If I know everybody, you, me, and media and fans want Nick to come out right now and say, "This is my guy." Too. Well, why would he do that?
Sure,
when you haven't even had a chance to go through spring and preseason. That would be the dumbest thing he could do. Which again, why I think he's a lot smarter than me. That's why he's going to sort of let it play out and make a decision from there.
Chris, looking at one little nugget here, courtesy of ESPN Stats and Information, and those guys do an excellent job. And I know they're an asset to what you guys are able to do. To win 5 national championships in 9 years is, as you say, going through the winning percentage. The past decade, major college football years. And those fun nuggets like this, it's something like Brad Edwards threw out a couple of days ago with us. It's these historical nuggets that sort of, they're intriguing. He made up a nugget. He said Alabama has had 11 consecutive years of being at some point ranked number 1 at some point from the AP poll during the last 11 consecutive years. The only other coach to do that is they're tied at 3 years in a row, and this is 11. And so they may have a chance to do it this year, and they'll have a chance to do it next year. And he said, that's tripling the statistic. It's just fun to look at these historical nuggets. I mean, they are truly blowing these things out of the crazy, out of the water, saying this is the greatest dynasty in college football history.
Yeah, you know what the translation is, Ryan?
What?
Enjoy the ride, brother.
Is that what it is?
Enjoy the ride, because somebody who's been around college football for a long time, it's always going to be cyclical to some degree. And what Nick has done there, will it be duplicated again in our lifetime? I don't know. Probably doubtful. But nothing is guaranteed. And I think, to me, as impressive as anything about this run under Nick Saban is the consistency, is that they just don't have, everybody in college football seemingly has a bad stretch or a bad game. I mean, as I put in my story, go back and look at how many games Alabama's lost to teams ranked outside the top 15.
Oh, that was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing stuff.
And compare that to other blue bloods, Ohio State, SC, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida State. It's not even close. That consistency of always being ready to play, and not that they don't have games where they don't play their best. Sure they do, but they seem to find a way, even when they're not at their best, to win those games. That consistency, to me, is remarkable.